Ladies and gentlemen, good day. This is Greg.
This is Matt.
And we are the bottom tier, my guys, coming to you live from our beautiful offices down here in Mesa, Arizona, where it's not even a little bit too hot for anything that actually wants to live. Friends, first of all, we'd like to apologize a little bit in case you hear a little phantom noise this time. We're recording this midday as opposed to after hours like we normally do. We are lucky enough to have a really nice recording setup here, courtesy of Matt's employers. And they are in the middle of doing some stuff right outside. So if you hear anything sort of, not us going on in the audio today, it's not ghosts. You're not crazy. There's just, actual business happening that's interfering with our podcast.
But I mean, hey, we're stoked we can meet up and be able to do this and utilize the recording studio. It just ended up being the best time because there's just so much stuff going on.
We're busy adults living busy adult lives.
Right. We're super busy
all the time.
Well, guys, welcome to the podcast. As always, we are bottom tier. We're here to make you go from the bottom to the top. And now we're here. That's a song, right?
Well, it should be if it's not.
I think it is. But today we have a very interesting topic for you. We want to talk about steeples of flesh and blood and foundational cards too.
Okay. First thing, is it steeples or is it staples?
Staples.
Okay.
Staples. Go to the church, meet all the people.
See, that's 100% where I go whenever you say that. You've been saying this for like a week now, and I'm just
staple. Look.
Nursery rhymes? Is that what we're doing now?
I grew up religious. Steeples.
Well, I mean, I did too, which is why I get the whole church vibe from that. So I'm working a little of the Catholic guilt is coming back.
My name, Matt.
I'm not used to that.
I don't speak well.
Me, Greg. Me, no English.
Yeah, we have podcast, and I don't know how to speak.
Talkie. Okay.
We're talking about the staples of flesh and blood. And so, what's a staple, Greg?
Oh man, when you say a staple card to me, the first thing that pops into my head is Art of War.
Okay.
Because literally everything can run Art of War, and literally everything gets some benefit from Art of War. There are just some cards that are just so good that you can run them as utility in literally everything. Art of War is a big one. Enlightened Strike, Command and Conquer, and Scar for a Scar see a lot of adoption across things. Some of these are super expensive. Art of War, I think, is $50 a pop or something.
Yep.
And then Scar for a Scar is cheaper than that. I have a bunch myself because it's just a common card, right?
Super common.
So it doesn't really matter common, super rare, or anything like that. Some are just really, really good. So how do you want to dig into this, Matt? Do you want to just run down a list?
You're right, man. So the staple cards, I think the reason I wanted to bring it up is it kind of flows into deck building. So we're going into a new season in Flesh and Blood.
Yes,
we're doing skirmishes, right? And so we're doing Blitz. And so I kind of want to talk about the staples and the foundations of deck building so that you could be able to, as a new player, understand what these cards do and also be able to have an idea of how to build a deck around it. So you mentioned really great stuff. I think that in Flesh and Blood, a lot of your foundation and staple cards are going to be the generics, which you just mentioned, Command 100%. And Conquer, Art of War, Scar for Scars, etc., and also generic equipment. The generics equipment are huge staples. For example, we have Arcanite Skullcap.
Or Faendal's Spring Tunic.
Faendal's Spring Tunic. Every single deck can utilize those two pieces very, very well, and you'll be able to have it forever and kind of already have most of the deck build kind of for the other decks already. Exactly.
Once you have your staples sort of in place, it's just a matter of filling in the archetype or talent specific stuff that you need in order to really make it sing.
So that's the difference. Is you need to know your staple cards. So of course we said Arcanite Skullcap, Faendal Spring Tunic. A new staple card just came out. A lot of people are switching from Skullcap to Crown of Providence.
Crown of Providence is great.
Yeah, it's really good. And so you're able to use it for armor for 2 damage, and when it breaks, you can remove your arsenal and draw a card and have 5-card hand instead of a 4-card hand, which is amazing. And then you have other staples too that are common, like Snapdragon Scalers.
Oh man, I've been running Snapdragon literally since my very first deck, and I do not see myself ever not running it in some capacity. It's just too good.
It's super good. And so that's kind of those set aside. I think that's what makes a staple is everyone uses it, right? But I think the bigger topic is having a foundation of what you want to build and 100%. Having something that can change the way you be able to play.
100%.
And so there's foundational cards that I kind of want to talk and bounce off you. I know I kind of came up with this topic, and so I'm just going to talk and you guys get to listen to me. But when deck building, there's always a thing you want to make sure happens. So for a prime example, we're going to talk about a hero. So after you pick your hero, you want to kind of pick about what strategy you want to do for that hero. And so let's use Fi, new Uprising hero.
Of course, let's use Fi, because Fi is your guy.
Fi is my guy. I'm a Fi guy. There is 3 main ways that you can build out Fi. There's 3 foundational strategies that you could do. And the first one is actually based off of a very specific card for Fi called Phoenix Form. Phoenix Form deck build. And so a Phoenix Form is where it attacks for 3, 0 cost. And if you have played a Phoenix Flame, it gets go again. If you've played 2 Phoenix Flames, it gets +2 and go again. If you play 3, it gets +2, go again. And if it hits, you get to draw 3 cards. Right?
Oof.
Yep. Great card. And so if you wanted to build a deck that was surrounded about Phoenix Form, you use that as your foundation. And that kind of determines the rest of your card number.
Because then you have your strategy in mind. You know what you're trying to go for. You know what you're trying to draw into. Mm-hmm. And so then it's just a matter of supporting that and then finding ways to draw into it.
Yeah. And so the good way to be able to do that is by making sure you run rainbow colors of Rise from the Ashes.
Right.
Inflame, which attacks for 1. But if you've played a red card, you can draw a Phoenix Flame from the graveyard. And you want to do Flameborn Retribution, where you can get the Phoenix Flames out from your deck onto the field as well, attacking for 3. If you have those 3 cards, like those huge concepts, you already have 20 cards added to your deck. So that takes care of a third of your deck, plus the Phoenix Form. And now you're able to have a higher chance of getting that Phoenix Form. That builds out your deck. The rest of it, you just fill in with attacks and everything like that.
The stuff to fill in the gaps, exactly. Because it does no good if you can't pull the cards that you need to.
Yeah.
So having that kind of front of mind, especially for more of an aggro sort of strategy like that seems like it is. I don't play a lot of Fi.
Yeah.
So I'm just, I'm armchair commenting at this point. But so it seems like it's, Fi is a pretty aggressive sort of strategy anyway, but that seems like we're like turning it up to 11, like really trying to hit with the flames as much as possible before you bring out, the big guns, so to speak.
And then you're able to set up those turns to be able to eventually get a mass trigger, which is I would say a staple card, because for ninjas, that's a staple ninja card. It's a very class specific staple. And so if you're able to make them forced to block for 3 and then be able to draw 5 cards or 3 cards from the other one, you're going to be able to draw 4 cards, do mass amount of damage. But this is just one foundation that you could do for Fi. There's 2 other ways you could be able to do that too. And so I think the main thing is like, you need to find what you want to build. So you mentioned Art of War earlier. That's another foundation you could do for Fi. Mm-hmm. I want to run Art of War Fi, and I want to mix it up with the Stubby's Hammers.
Nice. Right? Okay.
Right? So if you do that, that's another foundation. So how am I going to utilize that? Well, I need to make sure I have cards that don't go over 3 damage or have a 3 base so that Stubbies can activate it. I can also do Art of Roar, so I need to make sure I have low cost. But also I can add a card in there called Spreading Flames, which is where if you play that in the beginning of your Draconic Chain Link, your first card, if you play a card that has 1 base attack afterwards, that's Draconic, it will give it +1. And so that's another +1. So you can end up having +3 to every single card.
And over time, these little like +1s, especially in Fi, whose sort of whole thing is hit a bunch, hit for relatively low damage, but they just keep the chip damage going.
Yeah.
Getting those little +1s on things makes a massive difference. The difference between a 2 and a 3 doesn't seem like a lot until you have 9 cards out that all of a sudden do 3 or 4 damage apiece instead of 2 or 3 damage apiece.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. Like, it does a lot of damage, and that's the deck that a lot of people are building now. Is like, we're not going to run Phoenix Form because it's a very niche thing that we want to do. We want to build a deck that hits hard, hits fast, and be able to do 40 damage in a turn is what you're able to see with these Stubby Hammers turns. But then there's a whole other strategy that was the one that was winning the road to nationals, which is having Shuko, Tiger Stripe Shuko, be the pillar or the foundation of your deck.
And just relying on that to get the second attack bonuses and moving on from there.
This is where you see less red cards, more yellow cards, because they typically have a base of 2, because Shuko activates on that, to be able to push it towards 3, and mix it with that Art of War and that Spreading Flames. You're able to push a little bit more damage than what you would do with the other strategy involving Stubby Hammers. And so there's so many different facets you could do just for one hero, that I think as a new player, you have to find out what not only excites you as a hero, but what strategy excites you as a player too, and what you want to be able to push forward.
And then make sure that the hero sort of aligns with what you're looking for. Like if you take a hero like Fi, fantastic at aggro, can do a little bit of, the mid-range, stall them out, extend the gameplay a little bit. But if you go for more like a defensive strategy or like a stall sort of strategy, probably not going to be your guy.
Yeah.
Really sort of designed to do the fast, hard, quick hits like a ninja. Whereas if you take someone like Oldhim or something along those lines, more of a tanky sort of hero, you can do aggro with Oldhim. I've seen it done before to great effect.
Yeah.
But it's way, way easier and it's way more synergetic with the card and the cards available to that particular hero to go for a more, mid-range or control sort of setup.
Yeah.
So playing around with the different configurations is really it's fascinating when you stop and you look at it from a deck building perspective.
Yeah.
Not only can you do a lot with each hero, but each hero sort of inherently lends itself to certain things. So finding a way to really leverage that becomes one of sort of the keystones of deck building and playing the game.
Yeah, it's awesome. And like you mentioned the perfect hero of Oldhim, not the perfect hero, but you mentioned a good example.
For our purposes right now, Oldhim is the guy.
Yeah, but Oldhim, like you said, you could take those Guardian Crippling Crushes and all that stuff and make a very powerful Oldhim, or you choose to do the Guardian Defense reactions and make the very I'm going to stall you out Oldhim, which is what we see a lot of today.
Yeah.
And so it's really cool that you can see those different foundations. Like, I want to be stally. You then start using the defense reactions as your foundation, build out from there. You want to be aggro, you use some of the aggro cards as foundation, build out from there. Because you're going to have the same few cards that is going to be in every single version of the deck, like your Scar for Scars and stuff like that. It's just the foundational cards or the foundational strategy you want to do that's going to make your deck different from other decks. We can see it with Prism too. There's two different Prism decks. There's Aura Prism, which focuses on attacking you a lot with the spectral shields,
yeah,
and other auras. And then there is Herald Prism, which just hits you for big damage and disrupts your turn by playing out instants and stuff like that. And so every deck has kind of different pathways that you could find. But it's interesting because you can get creative of things that you've never done before too. So Bolton, my Bolty boy, great example is I feel like a lot of people are stuck in the foundation of you need to charge your soul to do cool things. And then I can do Lumina Ascension and do that. Because Lumina has turned into Bolton's foundation card for everything because it's specialization.
Yep.
It's powerful. You can do about 25 damage instantly pretty fast, right?
Yeah.
But like the thing is Bolton sometimes doesn't make it there because you're relying on having luck to draw that, and if your Luminas are on the bottom, that's a bummer.
Single points of failure are a problem. Full stop. If your entire deck revolves around one card or one particular play, you're going to lose. Consistency is absolutely key in any sort of game like this, especially with sort of the random chance element that comes with shuffling and drawing, and maybe you get a good hand, maybe you don't, sort of thing. You have to have a little bit of flexibility built in to be able to get through the turns and, set yourself up successfully so that when you get the 25 damage thing, they're at a position, your opponent's at a position where they can't respond to it.
Yeah.
And if all you're doing is just like in Bolton's case, like charging the soul, block, hold on for the Lumina, and then you get the Lumina and they have something to respond to that with, then you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I was talking with one of the guys from our local scene last night. And he was telling me how he used to run Turtle Katsu. And one of the things that he used is like, this as an example to explain why the strategy was so effective, was that he could handle 4 Luminas off of a Bolton.
There you go.
He could take 4 of them. So, I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are at that point, like how well you set up your flow or anything. If they can eat whatever you're throwing at them, it doesn't matter. Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to bring it up is you have to reconsider your strategy and you have to think a lot about these things. Like I'm fairly new to TCGs, and so I've been like, whoa, I really wanted to know this, like, because I didn't understand deck building at all. It's really easy to go to FabDB, look at a deck, pick it up, and then try your way through it and fail a lot. But now I'm being more coherent of, all right, like if I need to make sure I can attack with 1-cost weapons, I need to make sure I have a blue almost every hand, which means I need to divide 60 by 40, make sure I have like 15 blues, so I draw a blue, and be able to play out from there to be able to do all this stuff. And so going that minutia of like, I need to have this many blues, this many yellows, this much stuff to be able to do this. And if this is my main strategy, I'm going to rainbow it. Like I'm going to do Blade Runner or hit and run, stuff like that with hatchets. Like you got to make sure you understand how to be able to do that and what cards you need to have that, or you're just going to be like a normal Bolton and wait for that card effect that you think is really cool.
Exactly.
You need to build out from that card and see what pairs really, really well.
And just cramming like all of like these cards are super powerful, I'm going to put all of them in the deck together.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to work. The deck has to be like a holistic whole. It has to be greater than the sum of its parts. So it has to really work together. And especially like from a more casual perspective, being a little creative with that, feeling some stuff out and finding some interesting new ways to put things together, using some of those staples and then using sort of whatever you have on hand. That really is how you learn how to deck build.
Yep.
It's how you learn how to play different things, and that's how you leverage that into other things. Just because something doesn't work with, say, Bolton doesn't mean that it won't work with Dory. Just because something doesn't work with Rhinar doesn't mean that it won't work with Levia or something like that. So having a really strong grasp of the underlying mechanics and then the mechanics of the cards themselves leads to bigger and better things, and it leads to a better time for everybody.
Absolutely. So I think advice for brand new players or even expert players is take the time to, like, if you think that you could get a better strategy, first, go pick up a Blitz deck or a Commoner deck.
100%.
Play the hero first. Understand what the hero does. Then look at the corresponding cards. So, again, utilizing, we'll do a different hero this time, utilizing Viserai. We'll say, because I want to use two, Briar, right?
Cool, Briar.
You can then look at Runeblade cards. You can then look at Lightning cards. You can then look at Earth cards, and then you can look at
Elemental cards. Then you can look at
like Elemental. Yeah. So you can see, like, you're gonna need to look at all of those, read them, understand how that could go into Briar after you play it a couple times, so you can see what that's like. Then build a deck from it.
Exactly. And kind of as LSS keeps releasing new cards with new talents and new archetypes, it's going to get more and more complicated. You see in, like, the Welcome to Wraith and like the early sets, it's very straightforward. You got Brute, you got Warrior, you got Ninja, and they can do class stuff and they can do generic stuff, and that's all you got. And then you start getting Light and Shadow in there, and then you start getting the elements, so you have two different elements, plus the elemental class card, plus the standard element card, plus the standard class card, plus the generic. So you got 6 or 7 different types of cards that you can throw into a single deck, which makes flexibility like not an issue anymore because you can do 1,000 different things.
Exactly.
But it's also super overwhelming to come into it if you're not prepared for that sort of thing, because you have 1,000 different options and you're not sure, well, does this synergize with this, or do I need more lightning cards in this deck to lightning fuse this thing, and oh no, I don't have any earth cards in this deck, so I can't earth fuse anything, so that makes this card kind of worthless. And trying to play around those sorts of things, it hurts people's brains sometimes. It hurts my brain. I'm an intelligent guy, all right, I can grasp things very easily, but I've just picked up Briar recently, and trying to work out all these synergies is just it's frying me a little bit.
It's interesting, and I think the best thing you could do is after you feel like you have a good strategy or foundation built, or you have your I want to use this card and I want to do this, then what you gotta do, shuffle up, set your equipment out, and then play by yourself. Shuffle, draw 4 cards, and then draw 4 cards again, and draw 4 cards again, and see if you can play, and then see what feels awkward in your hand.
Exactly.
If you're like, this feels very weird and I don't like this, then you need to get rid of that card most likely. Or it's a very circumstantial card where you're like, I could use this for this scenario, and that's a thought you have. You now have found a card that will go in your sideboard. Right? Exactly. You see people run Command and Conquer in a lot of decks, but they actually just have in their sideboard for those certain heroes.
Just in case. Another big thing that does is it lets you kind of get a feel for how the proportions are broken out in the cards. Because, you can stack a deck with all attack actions and be okay. You can stack it with, if you're playing Wizard, then just all non-attack actions that do damage and stuff. Like, shout out to Icelander for those blue arsenals. But so like the other night I was playing and I just kept drawing like non-attack action cards, which would buff attack action cards. But I wasn't getting any attack action cards, or I was getting stuff that required me to fuse something in order to get a bonus or something like that. I just wasn't getting, the utility out of the hands that I needed, which just comes back to poor deck building. And it was an enlightening opportunity to sort of see how everything works in the wild, so to speak. Because you can do a couple of test hands, like, okay, cool, this is really good. I could do this and this, or I could do this and this, or something like that. But until you test it out against another deck and actually get a feel for how the flow is going to go, you're working with limited information.
Absolutely. And like, if you don't have someone else, like this might sound depressing, if you don't have someone else to like deck tech, like luckily Greg and I can verse each other and try things out, or we have a great community that wants to test. But I have multiple times just had my other deck that I already built and just like played a few rounds by myself against the other thing, trying my hard to win with both decks.
And really, that's a great way to do it, because then you're not just learning one hero and its tech, you're learning another hero and its tech, and then how the two interact with each other.
Yeah.
So each hero is going to have different pros and cons against each other hero. Sometimes you're going to be really good in a matchup. Sometimes a matchup is just going to be absolutely trash, and you're not going to have anything for it. So it gives you a really good opportunity to sort of reach that sort of plateau of knowledge where you're actually playing the game instead of the game playing you, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And so I think just our advice for just new players is just pick a hero. Then when you go buy some packs, because for some reason it just bites you, you're like, I like this game, I'm going to go buy a box now.
That's how it happens. It either bites you and you're super into it, or you hate it and you'll never look at it again.
Yeah. So you go buy a box, and then you look at the cards in the box and kind of separate them for what your hero is, and then pick out what you want your foundation to be.
And don't be afraid to buy stuff specifically, like looking for stuff for a particular hero. Like if you're a big Dory fan, buy some stuff that has some warrior cards in it. If you really like Briar, go out and buy some Arya. Like, just pick it up. Who cares?
Yeah.
Find the things that you love and work it. And that's a bottom tier top tip, everybody.
Bottom tier top tip. Well, I think this is a great deck. It changed from staples and foundations to more like deck building 101 and what you should really look for, right? And maybe that's what we'll call it, deck building 101.
Yeah, there's a snappy title.
Yeah,
like
deck building 101. But you literally should just think about those things, find out what you want to do, and really get ready for the skirmish season. And don't be afraid to lose in the beginning. Like, that's going to help you learn the most, because then that gives you the opportunity to go home, change some things up, change that foundation, and then go at it again and surprise them the next time.
Amen to that. And Matt, that's a perfect transition into our recurring topic. Friends, it's time for lessons learned. Now, Matt, we've had a fun little week this past week. I don't know about you, but I've been having a blast.
Yeah.
What have you learned this week? What are the big lessons you want to share today?
Man, I honestly was just so excited to talk about this that I didn't really think about what lessons I learned. Honestly, I think this episode might have been my giant lesson learned of understanding deck building a little bit, because I just wanted to change up Bolton so much and build him in Commoner. Now it might even be my Blitz deck coming soon. We'll see. Because I want to be able to be like, this hero has a different foundation than what everyone's given it, right?
Totally.
So if it's broke, fix it.
If it's broke, fix it. Exactly.
Yeah. But also I think a huge lesson is I learned a lot about the purpose of armor blocking while playing a game this week.
Okay, something that we don't talk about a whole lot.
Yeah. So it's being purposeful and why you want that certain armor in your deck. So for example, with Fi, playing Furnace is important. You're not really utilizing its ability. You're just utilizing that 2-in-1 block. Because that 1 HP can really, really help you at the end.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of the matches, especially against a Viserai, are going to end on 1v1.
Yeah, it's going to get right down to the wire.
And that 1 HP can help save a card in your hand, utilizing that block, and just saving that block for later in the game. So I think that was a huge lesson learned, is just saving my block, making sure if I'm at 3-4 HP, I need to make sure I select it, because that actually means I'm at 7 or 8, which means I could take on a full turn to be able to do a full turn back when I know they can't be able to block it.
Which is, especially with a hero like Fi that relies on that sort of speed, having that in the back pocket is phenomenal.
Yeah, super good. So blocking with your equipment is the main thing, and we always get worried about losing Spring Tunic or whatever, but like that block is more important than
sometimes holding on to that life is what you need more than the resource every 3 turns.
Yep. What about you? What lessons have you learned?
Man, so sort of to piggyback off of what we were talking about, it gets down to deck building for me. We played Commoner last night.
Yep.
Really great little armory event that we're doing now down here, which is super phenomenal. I love Commoner. And I came in with this new Briar deck, just testing the hero out, kind of seeing, I'm sort of dating several heroes right now.
Yeah.
Just kind of trying to figure out where I am since my beloved Chain got Living Legend. I can't play him in CC anymore, so I need a new CC guy. So I was trying out Briar, and I felt really good about this deck. We played a little over this weekend, and I did pretty well with it. We did a best of 3. I took it 2-0 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was feeling really good, and I came to play. I was jazzed. I was pumped. We were going to get it done, and then I just do dead hand after dead hand after dead hand. And so for the last night, I couldn't fall asleep, so I was busy thinking about it. I've been thinking about it all day at work today, and I've just been replaying in my mind, not just like the proportions and the stuff in the deck, but then how I was actually playing it. I wasn't taking full advantage of even the dead stuff that I had. I could have done better with it.
Yeah.
But because the deck wasn't performing the way I expected it to, I was getting in my own head. I was getting frustrated. I was letting myself get down about it. So for me, it comes back to having a realistic expectation of what the deck is and what the deck can accomplish, and not freaking out when it doesn't hit on all cylinders. Because it's not going to every time. Sometimes you're going to get a dead hand. Sometimes the draws are going to be rough. Sometimes you're not going to have what you need in order to counter whatever is happening on the other side. So really like staying in that positive mental space and then being willing to go back to the drawing board and rework things a little bit. That's my biggest lesson, is being flexible and open to change.
Yeah, open to change. I love that a lot. It was a perfect episode then today. It was just deck
really
building,
worked out. Yeah.
Because it's just, that's the huge part of Flesh and Blood that makes it so unique, is everybody not only has a unique hero, but has a unique take on what that hero can do. And that really is what, like, that's what happened with Viserai, is we had the cool person from Arsenal Pass. I forget your name. I don't think it was Hayden Dale, but it was the other one. Remember that one? But sent out that Viserai deck, and everyone's like, oh, this is neat. This is actually very interesting. And we also see it with Briar right now with Channel Mount Heroic, is these people these deck builders in the forefront can change the way the meta can go because they found something really unique. So go out there, experiment, find out what you want to be your foundation, and just really run with it. Because like, if you think about it, you kind of have to be like obsessed about it to like, I should run this. And then, because I've lost a few sleeps over Bolton as well, just be like, I should do this, and then go and see how it goes, see how it works.
Exactly. So Matt, we have just a few minutes left before we have to wrap it up for today. So I wanted to bring, it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. I blame the timing on that one. I have to get back to work in like 15 or 20 minutes.
How dare you?
I know.
Work?
I need to make money? What? So I was just, haunting a couple of the Flesh and Blood subreddits like I do, because I'm one of those guys. Them? Yeah, exactly. Real awkward. And I came across, apparently they've updated the leaderboard on Living Legend.
Yep.
Really interesting. Our girl Prism, 2 points away.
998.
998, which is phenomenal. I think that the Stravo Chain Prism sort of trifecta is going to be really interesting in that format for it actually to start getting going.
Yeah.
But a lot of the discussion that I was reading seemed to boil down to sort of 2 camps. One camp thinks that everything is good, and that the Prism going to Living Legend is great, and that everything is flowing the way it's supposed to. And the other camp is sort of people who think that the Living Legend system is broken.
Yeah.
Specifically because when you stop and look at things like Azalea, poor old Azalea, still down there at 0, been out since like near the beginning, still doing nothing. And you have a hero like Fi who's been out for like a month now. Ish.
Yeah.
And he's already like 15 or 20% of the way to Living Legend. Like, everybody is playing this guy.
Yeah, that's true. Dang it.
Right, exactly. So prepare yourself for that. But it's interesting in a couple of ways. The sort of non-rotational format that LSS has put into place, I'm curious what your thoughts are about that, because for me, from like an outside perspective, it seems like a really interesting way to do it, as opposed to something like Magic the Gathering, which purposely cycles sets in and out depending on how old they are, to sort of keep the meta in an ever evolving place. It's an interesting contrast, and it seems like what they're doing here, it could work, but I don't know how I feel about it. So I wanted to kind of get your input on that. See
Honestly,
what you were
like, I don't know the other systems. Like, I do know, like, we have a ban list and stuff like that, and I know that some cards are like, hey, like, you can't play from this set now, this year, season, or whatever. And I'm familiar with, like, some video games, too, on being like, this season you can only use these type of creatures for Pokemon. We'll name drop, like, right, for the I played competitively in the video game.
We'll go ahead and use the Pokemon the Pokemon example. I've played Pokemon for a long time. I get you. I imagine there's some overlap between the Flesh and Blood community and the competitive trainers in us.
So I played like the Pokemon video game, and so it'd be like you can only use these heroes, and the next one's like now you can use Legendaries, now you can use Restricted, which is like their pseudo Legendaries,
right?
Whatever. And so like I am familiar with that, and what I feel about with Living Legend is I actually genuinely, I don't think it's meant for us. Like, I think it's cool for us to watch what will get banned. I think it's created for LSS. And what I mean by that is I think it's a good, like, pulse on what people are playing, what people are enjoying, and what's balanced in the game. And so, for example, like, we see Azalea and we see Levia near the bottom, but Levia is going up now because we have really expert players.
Levia is actually higher than Icelander right now.
Perfect. So Levia is doing great. And so we're seeing a pulse on. That's actually really fascinating because of all the drafting.
Right.
But,
kind of nuts.
Yeah. But it's a pulse for LSS to be like, okay, so maybe this next set, we're going to give something to the Azalea players so they could play Azalea well. I think it's a good opportunity for them to kind of see the pulse, to be able to help bring these heroes up so they can see the score rise up a little bit. And maybe that's the main goal of it, is it's actually just for them. I think it's a really cool concept because that means like if people really explode on a hero, that means it's not going to last that long. So it means like it's kind of like the mind game of Flesh and Blood of like, maybe I shouldn't use this so I could be able to play it longer and maybe like play other heroes. Like, I think it's really cool to watch that.
Which is super cool. The thing that sort of, I don't know if bothers me is the right word for it, but the thing that kind of, sticks in my head is, we have 2 Living Legends in CC right now, so that's like 1 a year, basically, is what we're averaging.
Yeah.
Prism is about to get there. Fi is climbing those ranks really fast, and then people like Briar and Viscerai, Briar more so, are both, they're starting to get up there along with a couple of others, about a third of the way there or so. So what happens in a couple of years when, LSS has dropped a couple more expansions and maybe, 2, 3 more heroes, but we have heroes that are really starting to sort of get bumped out at a higher and higher rate. Because as, the chains and the prisms and the briars start to get bumped out into Living Legend, more and more people are going to be going to those sort of dominant meta decks. They're going to be start playing. We'll see more Fis and Katsus. We're going to see more, I think, Bravo Showstoppers pop up. So what happens when those ones start getting, elevated out?
Yeah.
Then people are going to have to start going down a little bit lower. Those are going to have to start playing like Dash and Lexi and Rhinar. And what happens when they get bumped out? Like the whole thing is, it's really interesting for the first few years when it's kind of like a free-for-all, like a battle royale sort of thing.
Yeah.
But as the meta evolves and as people's play preferences evolve, it starts to really create a really rigidly tiered system that could be really good or it could be really bad.
Right. I think that LSS suffers a little bit because like the game did come out in the middle of the pandemic. Like that's when it was released.
Yeah.
And I think with the increase of live events, maybe, and seeing like how fast these heroes gain points, because just to address your issue, is like maybe a good tactic is to reevaluate the number that something becomes Living Legend. So maybe 1,000 might be too small because it's like the amount of live events going out there. Like we had like 2 Road to Nationals here, so that's us. But if every state has 2 to 3, that's a lot of points that a hero could win.
That is a lot.
Yeah. And so I think reassessing the number to be maybe 2,000 or 3,000 could be the change that's needed to make sure it's there longer. Because Starvo, dominated and was only in there for like 6 months.
Oh yeah, because everybody ran. It was just too good.
It was really good. And I think everyone was relieved that it was gone. But the thing that was kind of crazy is at the very end, like Starvo wasn't earning the points. It was Chain and Prism because they got creative with their deck building on how to overcome the opposition of what to do. And so maybe if we saw it be extended to 3,000, we'd still have Starvo in the meta, and we'd still have people trying to like learn how to outperform Starvo, Prism, and Chain, and we'd see different deck builds come from that. So it leads to a fascinating type place of the game is maybe they adjust the number to be a little bit bigger because now there's live events and they're actually getting numbers and the game's growing, or they are just going to be faster at releasing heroes to be for CC. So maybe this next Dynasty set, they already have a hero or adult heroes that they're going to add in there, and we're going to see a lot more adult heroes.
Hopefully they have a couple, because I feel like CC especially really needs the shot in the arm. I feel like it's moving a little bit too slow. See, like if we go back to like the Pokemon example, for example, when you start playing competitively, it has like a really like rigid tier system. You have the ones that are used all the time, you have the ones that are sort of used, and so on and so forth. And it's based on usage. It's not necessarily based on what's most or least powerful. Like you can have a really powerful creature that's in a lower tier because it's just not as useful as another one that looks weaker on paper. Which sort of avoids that whole issue. It allows the people who are playing the game to sort of set the rules, basically, and it can respond much quicker. I'm worried that eventually all the heroes people want to play are going to get bumped into Living Legend, and so everyone's going to just start playing Living Legend, and nobody's going to play CC or Blitz or anything like that anymore. It'll become less popular as the heroes that people really enjoy playing all end up in LL.
I mean, you could be right, and maybe that's where we're going to start seeing the introduction of that season. Because right now, it went from CC season, right? Road to National CC to Blitz season, skirmishes is going to be right now, right, for this next month.
Yep.
Maybe in coming years, we're going to be like Living Legend season.
I really hope so.
And that will be something different.
Especially with like 3 or 4 heroes in the Living Legend meta, you actually have a viable meta at that point.
Yeah.
You actually have a viable ecosystem for that.
And it'd be fun to see Starvo versus Fi. Like it'd be cool to be able to see that matchup when that happens and see what's better, right? So I mean, like there's that. I think we will see a Living Legend like month or season to be able to go towards Worlds or something like that. But I mean, we don't have a commoner season yet or anything like that. But I mean, Living Legend could be a new rule set where there's no bans, no whatever. Like it's
nothing
a wild
west, complete free for all.
Yeah.
But you have to use these heroes.
Yep. So we'll see.
That could be super interesting.
It could be interesting.
All right, Matt. So do we have any final thoughts that we want to leave the people with today?
Good luck this season. Have fun. Pick a hero that you like and find those foundation cards. And just go out there and have fun.
Jump in, get your feet wet. The only thing holding you back is yourself.
Oh, so good.
Words of wisdom.
I think we're ending right there.
I think that's perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and family, I am Greg.
I'm Matt.
We're the bottom tier, and thank you so much for joining us. We hope you have a great rest of the week. We'll talk to you next time.